how ISFPs defy their stereotype. Leaders. I start with the premise that the function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. It seems like a well-established pattern that the best people to wield power are the ones who rarely seek it and accept it with trepidation. The archetype of reluctant leaders is one that I associate with ISFPs, to be enablers of people's individuality, to give people permission to make their own judgments on things. It reminds me a lot of the legendary British naval officer, Horatio Nelson, probably most famous for his defeat of Napoleon's fleet in the Battle of Trafalgar. His leadership style was to make sure that everyone was aware of his views, opinions, instincts, his way of reacting, and his plans. It was a kind of egalitarian openness, where his men felt emboldened to act decisively in the moment. It wasn't a conventional top-down leadership style, where he is above others. It's more horizontal, empowering, and trusting. I'm not sure about his type. I've actually seen him typed as an ESFP, but his leadership style definitely lines up with the ISFP approach, in my view. As a side note, as was common at the time, there were still pretty bad punishments for lack of discipline, so Nelson wasn't always Mr. Nice Guy. He was still very much in charge in terms of rank, and there was a hierarchy. A good fictional example would be Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, the show and not the books. He's someone who's very much in the archetype of the reluctant leader. He doesn't want power, doesn't seek it, but it kind of finds him, and he gradually takes it on. Again, he's someone who wants other people to make their own choices and do what they feel is right for them. It's that same kind of empowering mindset. There's also a large element of leading by example. I'm going to act in line with my principles and values and beliefs, and that kind of mindset or philosophy or culture is going to seep through and permeate through a group or community or organization or army. So whereas ENTJs are seen as the commanders of life, that says more about their style of leadership than their capacity to do it. In my view, ISFPs are very well suited to leadership, even if they themselves might not feel like the most natural fit for it initially. Intellectuals. The best way to convey the underrated intellectual nature of ISFPs is to think about it this way. ISFPs often mistype as INTJs. That's probably because of the intuitive bias in the typology community, especially with the online tests. ISFPs are going to come across like INTJs in many ways. It's a mindset they can and often do channel. Also, ISFPs, like the ISTPs, because of the balance they have with SE and NI, are like sensing intuitive hybrids who can combine both ways of being. The intellectual nature of ISFPs is underrated. They are highly intuitive in a way that's balanced, and therefore more reliable and powerful, being able to see patterns and make connections that are grounded in data and reality. They are like realistic intuitives. Passive, quiet, and indecisive. It's not about making the right choice. It's about making a choice and making it right. People often describe ISFPs as being chilled out and laid back to a fault. But this overlooks the fact that their main way of approaching life is very action-oriented and active. Being an FI Dom means that they're going to know exactly how they feel about people and situations. So being decisive is definitely not something they struggle with. The only times this will show up for them is when they are torn between multiple options that they equally dislike or are equally uninspired by, which can be sadly common in life. I think that is where the stereotype comes from. Lots of people in the life of an ISFP won't see them in their element, especially during the education system, or if they're initially working in jobs that they dislike. So it can take them a while in life to find their groove, and their flow, and their place. Since they are introverts and are extremely introspective, people might only see this side of them for a long time, and kind of be shocked when they spring into action, or come alive. Overly and overtly emotional. I've mentioned this point before, so I'll make it brief. ISFPs aren't going to come across as noticeably emotional when it comes to talking about their feelings. In fact, they may lean towards being overly private in this area. Also, when it comes to emotional intensity, that also extends to more fiery and forceful emotions as well. So if you're going to cast them as very emotional, there are two sides to that coin: toughness, grit, and elegance. To me, this is the beautiful duality of ISFPs. It's artistry and intensity, or even aggression. It's strength and sensitivity. Particularly, they have a certain grace under pressure. They can seem somehow delicate and powerful at the same time. I probably should have thought of some examples of ISFPs to use, but I'll mention some people that I think convey this idea. I think the football player Messi is a good example. Also maybe someone like Roger Federer, the tennis player. You see their elegance and subtlety, but that kind of obscure the mentality, the toughness, the grit, the drive, the ambition, the willingness to engage in the fight and the battle. those elements get overlooked. So I don't have a problem with this notion of artistry being associated with ISFPs, just not when it detracts from all of these other traits that are there by definition too. I think that ISFPs intuitively understand this duality or dichotomy, or even paradox. Sometimes a boxing match is a thing of beauty and elegance and artistry, and sometimes a poem or a painting is an act of aggression and intensity and violence. These things are connected by the emotions that the person brings to them or experiences from them.